Fratelle, non vol tradino mai la cara pace, ne giunga a profanarvi vostra rapace.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt Enrico Caruso there with a bunch of hacking and stuff, but yeah, you're not. Yeah, hello, welcome to Mr. Opera, and it's a Friday night, usually an extremely quiet night here in the live streams. So I don't expect too many people, and I'm gonna use the opportunity to get through some more of Hints on Singing by Manuel Garcia, because I owe you guys a whole reading of this book, and then I mean, arguably we do need to go back and sing all of these exercises that are listed here, but that's a bit, shall we say, ambitious for this kind of live stream to be doing all of that. So, without further ado, let's get on to some Hints on Singing by Manuel Garcia. And before we get there, I'm going to try to spice things up a little bit with my intro song for New School Singer. This song is supposed to let us know that, like, we're going to school. And, of course, it's, like, really exciting sounding music. And typically that's how we let you know in educational circles that it's time to do boring stuff. And it's not that Garcia is boring. It's just a little bit, it's like reading a book. It's not as much fun as watching videos and talking trash. Yeah. So anyway, let's see if this works. Nope. No. Sort of. Yeah, welcome to school. We're going to talk about, position, motion, attitude, and, yeah, that's New School Singing. So, there I am, doing teacher stuff, and ostensibly, I'm the teacher here on Mr. Opera. Let's change my camera angle just a little bit. Let's move me over. So, now the reason for reading all of this old school stuff is opera is a traditional art form, and it's good to know something about where different terms came from and different ideas came from that we're talking about. Of course, I love to do other stuff than what we're supposed to be doing. So before we get to the school part, of course, we're going to see if I can bring this up here. We're going to look at some anatomy. Oops, that's not what we wanted. We wanted this thing about the linea alba. Let me just push this down a bit. There. Alba. So the question I got was about this pyramidalis muscle. Let's maybe I'll insert myself into this picture here. Okay. Should I give myself a little bit of background music? So the question was about what is the importance or function, or if anything, that we're talking about with this pyramidalis muscle. And it kind of vaguely rang a bell, but I couldn't recall exactly what the pyramidalis muscle was. And whenever that happens, I like to go to KenHub. It's kenhub.com. That's the site that... Oops. What's up here? Let me turn up my microphone. So whenever I have some doubts in anatomy these days, I like to go to KenHub, and I'm not sponsored by them or anything like that. I just really like this website. So kenhub.com. You can see the Ken as in like Barbie and Ken, HUB.com. And this is a really good site to get your bearings when you've got an anatomy question. And the awesome part about this is when you're reading, there's like hyperlinks, so you can keep reading to see what things connect to. So this pyramidalis is a paired triangular muscle of the anterior abdominal wall, so the front of your abdomen, abs, we're in the abs basically, found on each side of the linea alba. And this linea alba is going to be really interesting. So we're going to go back to it as we're procrastinating here, because we're supposed to be reading Manuel Garcia. This is Mr. Opera reading, supposed to be reading Manuel Garcia, and it's supposed to be number 15. But yeah, we're not doing it. We're doing this instead. So the pyramidalis, according to the narrowest anatomical classification, belongs to the anterior abdominal muscles together with the rectus abdominis muscle. However, in a broader picture that takes the functional anatomy into account, these two muscles comprise the anterolateral abdominal wall. Anterior, that means like back, I guess. Front, and posterior is back. So anterior, front, and then lateral means side. So the front side abdominal wall, along with the lateral abdominal muscles, the external oblique, the internal oblique, and transversus abdominis muscles, the other TA. The pyramidalis muscle tenses the linea alba, in which is an action that doesn't have a significant function when occurring on its own. However, acting together with the rest of the abdominal muscles, pyramidalis muscle contributes to a variety of abdominal wall functions, such as increasing the intra-abdominal pressure when necessary, e.g., labor, forced expiration, and defecation. And the second one, forced expiration, is singing. Singing, speech, basically, those are examples of forced expiration more broadly. So like vocalizing is a type of forced expiration. Like if we had to put it on a tree that shows all the actions we can do and which actions are like subcategories of other bigger categories. Well, vocalizing, whether you're talking or singing, is an example of forced expiration. So this pyramidalis, this little muscle, plays a role in increasing intra-abdominal pressure. Intra-abdominal pressure is, think of it as the pressure in your guts. So you've got your lungs. Your lungs are in your chest. And a lot of people talk about like breathing into their belly. When you're breathing into your belly, what you're doing is pressuring usually the abdominal wall in a specific way. You're pressurizing, the abdomen. You're managing intra-abdominal pressure in coordination with maybe some movements, and you're lowering and raising it to help you affect the pressure that's in the lungs, which is above there. But still, if you think about it, like if you're inflating a balloon and it's running out of room of things to inflate into, so let's say you put a balloon in a box and you keep forcing air into there, you can raise the pressure of that balloon. And if you start to weaken one of the walls of that box, well, the balloon's going to want to spill out from that wall, and you'll get a corresponding decrease in pressure from that. Well, it's like an aneurysm kind of thing, from this kind of bubble that pops out. It's going to lower the overall pressure in the balloon. Because this elasticity. So this pyramidalis muscle is important as far as that goes, and it just happens to be in a super fun area. Originates from the pubic symphysis. I guess it's called the symphysis because when you like somebody and you're looking at this area, it's like a symphony. No, anyway, the part of the muscle originating from the symphysis arises by ligamentous fibers, while the bony attachment arises by tendinous fibers, blah, blah, blah. So this is maybe more details than we need. But what I wanted to focus on now, so like, and the question was like, is this important? And like, well, obviously yes, because if we're trying to make especially like bigger sounds, we really need to be good at managing this intra-abdominal pressure. And you see people use different strategies. Like one extreme end of these strategies is the belly breathing, I guess. And I tend to call that and tilting the pelvis forward rather than Rather than pointing out that the belly is expanding, I think it helps more to understand belly breathing as opening the front of the pelvis and closing the back of the pelvis. And then to understand breathing into your back as closing the front of your pelvis and opening the back of your pelvis. And the way I suggest looking at this is that those are two sides sort of the same coin, inhaling and exhaling. And that when you want to figure out what's good support, you should always have some you should always have some specific phrase or gesture in mind. That there's no such thing as good support or better. You can't say that breathing into your back is better than belly breathing unless you have a specific scenario where you're asking that question. And then you could test both, and one's going to be successful for one reason or another. There's going to be different considerations, and the other one's going to be less successful, and now you can say, right? So anyway, so when you need to increase intra-abdominal pressure, this muscle looks interesting. But what interested me now about reading this article, which is by Jana Vaskovic. It looks like Czech person. Anyway, is they refer to this linea alba, and that made me really interested. Pyramidalis is a paired triangular muscle of the anterior abdominal wall found on each side of the linea alba. That sounded really familiar, and I was like, what's that again? So I clicked on linea alba, and here's the article on the linea alba from KenHub. And this is super cool and will help us understand the voice, because as we're going to see in a minute, the voice actually has one of these. Your vocal tract has something like this, all like its own thing, just like this. Okay. The linea alba, Latin for the white line, and also possibly a good band name, but also possibly a band name for really the wrong kind of band. Anyway, linea alba, the white line, is a tendinous, fibrous raphe that runs vertically down the midline of the abdomen. It extends between the inferior limit of the sternum and the pubis, separating the rectus abdominis muscles. In leaner, more muscular individuals, it is visible externally as a longitudinal, shallow groove. Even though the linea alba is not a muscle, Terminologia Anatomica lists it under abdominal muscles. Why would that be? It's because the linea alba is formed by the interlacing aponeuroses of three vertical abdominal muscles: external oblique, internal oblique, and transversus abdominis muscles. These little charts are really great. Origin, tip of xiphoid process. If you don't remember your anatomy, the xiphoid process is part of your sternum. Your sternum, I believe, is the... oh, crap. Anyway, it has this manubrium and then this xiphoid process. Right above your solar plexus is this xiphoid process. So, in case you didn't realize, your sternum is a joint. It's not like one bone. It's a joint. And the last part of this joint, I believe, is the xiphoid process. Process means bony thing that sticks out, basically. It's, if you ever wondered, like, how do your muscles actually wind up sticking to bone? The answer is sometimes they are attached to bones by these processes. It's a part of the bone that sticks out. So if you imagine like here's a bone and there's like a peg sticking out of it, right? And then the muscle can use that as a place to grab onto the bone, basically. It's like it's a spot where muscles can grab onto bones. Oh, geez, and I'm playing with my levels again. I'm sorry, guys. I have some double mapped settings. So here we go. Getting yeah. Now I've got monitoring, so I can double check.
When I do vocal effects like this one, I won't be surprised by them. Anyway. Yeah, I think it's still on.
No, it's off. Yeah. This is, on the one hand, it can be really really intimidating to try to stream on a Friday night. It's just like, I know nobody's going to be here. But then, what an opportunity, right? Like, nobody's here. I could do whatever I want. And then if it was really bad, just delete the video. Y'all would be none the wiser. But anyway. But if you're watching this tomorrow, I guess I should behave and not do anything crazy. Okay, so I won't do anything crazy. Anterior fibers, pubic symphysis. So, structure formed. So this thing is the line in the front of your six-pack. In other words. And there's the xiphoid process there. I think I can make this bigger. Boom. This green part, that's the xiphoid process. Right where I told you it would be. I think this upper one... Oh, jeez. Upper one is manubrium. What are the parts of the sternum? Well, anyway, we can look it up. What we're interested in for now, though, let's not get distracted, is this white line, this linea alba, and see, relations and function. Structure. Better not get canceled, so I'll turn that off. And here's a look at what it's like on the inside, what this line is like on the inside. So it's like this fibrous thing. Like muscles mingling together, holding hands with some glue between them, basically. It's not a bone, but it's like, it's harder than muscle, and so you can attach things to it and pull. It's like a semi-rigid part of the abdomen. It's almost functioning like, how squid, they don't have shells, they just have like this flexible quill thing inside them. It's almost functioning like that, where it's this super flexible structure. It's super flexible, but it's still structure. And that's called, in general, that kind of thing that's this word that I used, raphe. A tendinous fibrous raphe. So a raphe, think of it as like a soft spine. You have the bony spine in the back, but then in the front, and it's not just soft. you have this line down the middle that's almost like a spine. It's the raphe. It's a raphe, right? And that helps hold the whole abdomen together and whatever. Helps it do its stuff. Now, if we do... if we look up now the anatomy of the pharynx. So moving on to the voice. I'm going to do a search for the pharyngeal raphe. Here we go. Now, if we go over to the muscles and walls of the pharynx. Now, if you're not familiar with what the pharynx is, your larynx is this part, is the voice box. And then on top of that, where you're resonating the sound, but before you get to your mouth, is the laryngopharynx. And then as you approach the mouth, it's the oropharynx, and then you're in the mouth. And here we go. The pharynx is a muscular column that runs between the oral cavity and the esophagus. It is divided up into three main sections known as the oropharynx, the nasopharynx, and the laryngopharynx. All three of these cavities open posteriorly into the pharyngeal tube. This article will highlight the anatomical structures, namely the muscles that make up blah, blah, blah. Okay. So this is basically, how is your voice put together? This is worth just reviewing a bit. The muscles that make up the pharyngeal walls run both circularly on the outside and longitudinally on the inside. So forward and back, but then also making circles around the outside of that. The three pharyngeal constrictor muscles make up the outer layer of the wall, while the inner layer is comprised of paired muscles. The superior, middle, and inferior pharyngeal constrictor muscles form a muscular sleeve that has a strong internal lining on its fascial aspect known as the pharyngobasilar fascia. Let's see what we can see here. Let's maybe expand this diagram, and I think I have to pull up the whiteboard here. Projector. One second, folks. Just gonna use my whistle talking card too. When I'm over here and need to get my my writing tablet. Crash my whole computer or something. Hey, tablet. Go. Year and a half. This This is red. Okay. Uh, so for looking for the larynx, well, it's not here. Actually, your larynx can kind of float up and down, but it's going to be connected to this part, to the esophagus. If you're thinking from the, let's say, okay, from the point of view of the tongue, right? This area, if your mouth is closed, that's going to be behind the back of your tongue. Your mouth is closed and your larynx is high, just kind of relaxed. This square area that I circled, that's behind your tongue. And some parts of that orange section there in the middle constrictor are actually involved in pulling the tongue back. Yeah, that's how to think of that. And oh, I may have to just get rid of that. Okay. Right. When you swallow, what happens is that this green part opens first, while this orange part and purple and red part are all shut. And then as the orange part opens, the purple part, shall we say, are opening. Now the green part is starting to close. And now as the orange part starts to close, let's say, the purple part is completely dilated, as big as it gets, and the red part, the inferior constrictor, opens. And then finally they all close, or finally the bottom part closes. And that makes a wave action. That's how you push food down, and that's called peristalsis. So if you're looking for the swallowing muscles in the vocal tract, it's essentially all of them. All the muscles of your vocal tract are swallowing muscles. They they take turns in swallowing. And you shouldn't think of any of your muscles as swallowing muscles, essentially. You should simply think of them all as, well, just according to whatever function it is that they have that you've looked up. But what we want to get here is the part of the article that's going to tell us about this line running down the middle of these. So, here we go. Pharyngeal raphe. A second. I think because this article is, let's see, focusing on muscles, what we need about is the raphe. If we do it this way. What I'm trying to show you is that your voice essentially has its own spine, but it's not a spine, it's a raphe. And the best thing to compare it to is this line that runs down the middle of your abs and helps your abs. Well, that's how you're put together in the middle, and it gives your abdomen some rigidity. You know, your abdomen isn't just this formless bag of guts plus muscles. There's this harder stuff right down the middle. And it essentially works. Maybe we may have to find a different source other than KenHub, because they're mentioning the raphe, but I'm not seeing. Oops, I'm not seeing like an article on pharyngeal raphe itself. There's Wikipedia, which is not the best. But it's gonna have some sources anyway. How about the European Bioinformatics Institute? Okay. Just giving it, so this is the foundational model of anatomy, which gives you the whole body basically as like a tree. So now I'm getting stuck on this page. So back to KenHub, I guess. And I'll just have to describe it to you myself. You have essentially at the top of these 3 pharyngeal constrictors, which we were just looking at, something like a head, which you see on this diagram here. I know it can be easy to get lost. Like you're looking at this and you're thinking, what does this have to do with my voice? So give me 1 second and I'll try to, I can take all the time I want. You guys are watching this later. Oh, hi. I am Michael Caliplip. Welcome. And yes, I mean, you're absolutely right. If you're trying to sing better, it's like you just got to train. But also these parts of the anatomy are kind of cool and interesting, I think, all by themselves. So it's like it's worth talking about them and having a live stream, in my opinion. So I mean, that's why I'm doing it. The reason I think for talking about the pharyngeal raphe in particular, like why I'm bringing this up here. I don't got my chats, do I? And hey, all of you, Dorian Constantinescu, welcome. I didn't think any would come on Friday. Like usually I'm here on Friday to, I don't know, like to practice. So, but I'm talking about the pharyngeal raphe because someone asked a question. I forget who it was, and I don't know why My chats aren't working here. Hang on a second, guys. I'm going to try to fix my chats. I'm going to give you some background music and see if I can get the chats working on the page. Yes, I think we got it. I got my chats working. Yes. So yeah, Michael, that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, Olivia, if you got any questions about what I'm doing, speak up. So let's get oriented on this confusing looking diagram of the pharynx, because I think it's pretty important. And so I can do this a little bit more easily. Myself whiteboard here. Okay. This pharyngobasilar fascia is pretty important. If you think behind your soft palate at the top of your vocal tract, the very, very, very highest point of your vocal tract, you've got this thing called the pharyngobasilar fascia. It's not cartilage. It's not muscle. It's this... Turn down my background music here. It's this fascia. Fascia is... I don't know. It is what it is. It's like stuff. Semi-rigid stuff. Softer than cartilage, but harder than muscle, I guess. A lot harder than fat. And there's this cartilaginous part of auditory tube. You can just ignore that. That's basically, there's connection to the ears up here. And you've got muscles inserting into that. The salpingopharyngeus, if I recall correctly, elevates and broadens the pharynx. And this superior pharyngeal constrictor muscle here, that's going to be, if you go down one level from the very top of the vocal tract, so like your soft palate and behind there, oh yeah, Olivia, thanks. Yes. It's a tissue casing connected right behind the eustachian tube, we call it in English, but yes. And this thing is essentially the skull of the vocal tract. You could think of it, it's not really the skull, but I'm making the point that this white line running down the middle, oh God, I did not draw that very well. But if you look at the diagram here, down the middle of this is this thing called the pharyngeal raphe. It's labeled over here. Got my eraser on now. Turn the eraser off. So pharyngeal raphe, and that's pointing to this white line, and that white line runs down the whole vocal tract, all the way down to the trachea, if I'm not mistaken. And the way the constrictor muscles work, and don't worry about the name constrictor, it's just constriction in the sense of like the scientific word constriction, which just means that you have a tube and you need to narrow it in some way. And so when we described swallowing, for instance, swallowing was 1, 2, 3 constrictions, coordinated, and makes like a wave action, and that is how you can push food through the vocal tract. Which I guess when you're eating, it's not a vocal tract anymore, is it? So these muscles, think of them as encircling, but they're not like rings in your vocal tract that constrict and magically close it out of nothing. If we're looking at, for instance, the middle pharyngeal constrictor, let me get this out of the way. So if we're looking at the middle pharyngeal constrictor, let's go to the part of the article on this. The middle pharyngeal constrictor muscle proximally attaches to the stylohyoid ligament and the greater and lesser cornu of the hyoid bone. That's in front. Stylohyoid ligament and the greater and lesser cornu of the hyoid bone. So this is the bone that's at the base of your tongue, or you could say at the top of your larynx. It's the intersection of your tongue and larynx, you could say. It distally attaches to the median pharyngeal raphe, as does the inferior pharyngeal constrictor muscle. It constricts the middle portion of the pharynx. How is it doing that, though, if it's attached to the hyoid bone? If it's attached to the greater and lesser cornu of the hyoid bone, those are these little horns, all the way in the front, mind you, are these lesser cornu of the hyoid bone, right? So when this thing is constricting, it's attached in the back to this pharyngeal raphe. So it's not like the back of your pharynx is suddenly just caving in towards the inside of your pharynx. What's going to happen is your hyoid bone's going to start coming back. So if we're looking at tongue retraction now, then we might start thinking about the middle pharyngeal constrictor. And then it's like, well, our tongue retraction could be happening in a way that doesn't involve much work for the actual tongue itself, because it can be done by this pharyngeal constrictor. And then you look even, think a little bit deeper now. The pharyngeal raphe is running down the back of the vocal tract. That's connecting up to your hyoid bone. And if we look at the the superior pharyngeal constrictor, even I think straight to the tongue. Let's see. Let's see. Superior pharyngeal constrictor muscle originates from the pterygoid hamulus, which are these cool little hooks. Your sphenoid bone in your skull has these little kind of like hooks hanging off of them, and they're called pterygoid hamulus, and I think that's a really cool name. Pterygoid hamulus. It's fun to say. Pterygoid hamulus. Anyway, and the pterygomandibular raphe, which is a different raphe, and the posterior end of mylohyoid line of the mandible. I guess, well, that's yeah. So it's our middle constrictor more that's going towards the tongue, and then also the what did it tell us? So the bone that's under the tongue. Now, if I'm not mistaken, there's more to the superior pharyngeal constrictor. Yes. So this superior pharyngeal constrictor muscle, the highest level of the superior pharyngeal constrictors, is super complex and has 4 parts. Pterygopharyngeal, and that's going to be attached to those pterygoid hamulus things. Pterygoid hamuli, I think. Buccopharyngeal, and that's probably related to like the buccinator muscle, or buccinator. I don't know how you say it. Buccinator muscle. Myelopharyngeal part. Mylohyoid, remember, was our muscle that goes from the jaw to the hyoid bone. And then glossopharyngeal part. And when we see the word glosso, then we know we mean tongue, and so that means tongue to pharynx. Glossopharyngeal. Let me just check my... Pterodactyl ham mules. That's right, yeah, Olivia. The pterodactyl ham mules. I'm gonna have to make a t-shirt. I'm by the way, guys, it's 2,000 subscribers on Mr. Opera, and it's like 4,500 or something on This Is Opera, but most of them hate me. And who knows how long This Is Opera is gonna let me spam their channel. I'm the only thing going on. Like, nobody else is stepping up to do This Is Opera stuff, so I'm it. So the ham mules have won the game. So the glossoph... Yes, anyway. Oh, fuck. Second, guys. Yeah. All that so that I could go... Yeah, that was necessary, though. So... Let's get into the superior pharyngeal constrictor, because otherwise we're gonna have to read Manuel Garcia. So the pterygopharyngeal part, like I said, originates from the pterygoid hamulus of the sphenoid bone. The buccopharyngeal part originates from the pterygomaryngeal raphe of buccopharyngeal fascia. Myelopharyngeal part originates from the mylohyoid line of the mandible, but this glossopharyngeal part originates from the tongue. Immediately after originating from these 4 structures, the muscle fibers converge posteriorly to form the superior lateral wall of the pharynx. So we've got one muscle, and that muscle is arguably not one muscle. It's arguably a complex of muscles. But this complex of muscles slash muscle, shall we say, connects your skull, because this sphenoid bone is this this one. These guys are all slapping their, well, they're slapping their forehead, but yeah, anyway. Sphenoid bone, the like this, your cheeks, basically, buccopharyngeal fascia, your jaw, the mandible, the bottom part of your jaw, and the tongue. And now think about what that means if these four parts attaching the jaw, tongue, skull, and the cheeks all insert into a raphe, or like a spine that runs down the back of your vocal tract. What does that imply about the importance of, for instance, posture? Because your posture is going to have a big influence on how your raphe is actually behaving. When you breathe, when you move, when you stand, how your pharyngeal raphe behaves is essentially going to be dictated by how your spine behaves, because your raphe comes down from this head of your vocal tract, this go back, where's our pharyngo-basilar fascia? Here we go. So here's our, I can bring up my projector here. And I'll quickly also answer this question, because I love getting distracted. Toji Fushiguro, welcome. Do opera tenors use mixed voice? Well, that's a really interesting question. Maybe I'll leave that until later. Let me know if you're still here, can you ask this again? And I'll try to give you an answer. It's complicated. And well, first of all, like I don't exactly use this terminology of mixed voice, but if I do, I use it really subjectively. But when I say mixed voice, I mean basically I mean mezzo piano. That's all I mean. Or I could mean something else, but I think I've got some terminology to offer that is superior to terms like mixed voice, and then your question can be better, I guess, than do opera tenors use mixed voice. I think that opera tenors use, if you're talking in general, in all of opera, they use all four of the vocal modes that are described by complete vocal technique. That's neutral, curbing, overdrive, and edge. And I think they also use a variety of densities. So they don't use they use polar density in those four modes, except for curbing, obviously, which can only be sung with reduced density. But other than curbing, they use fuller density and reduced density in all of these four vocal modes, and often even the loudest of operatic tenor is going to be using falsetto once in a while for some brief moments. So I mean, yes, the answer to your question is whatever you have in mind as mixed voice, then probably there's some opera tenor somewhere who's using it. Yeah. Um, Opera tenors are trained extremely non-specifically. Opera tenors are told something like that there's some principles about singing, like that you have to open your throat, and depending on where they're getting their information, they might be told something like they need to relax everything, or whatever it is they're being told. They're generally also going to be told that the sound that they get is mostly because of their genetics. It's like mostly because you are this type of tenor. So they don't have much of a concept of what vocal modes they use, for instance. Until I learned about the vocal modes from Complete Vocal Technique, I never thought of anything other than, like, I don't know, chest or head maybe, or full voice and off the voice. That's what I thought of. And I did think about things like mixed voice, but mixed voice to me was a combination of full voice and singing off your voice. And yeah, I used it, and I still use it. Then someone else's idea of a mix might be, for instance, reduced density metallic singing, like reduced density edge or in curbing. And in that case, I tried to avoid it as an operatic tenor, but someone else might be using it on purpose and might be using it well. So, yeah. I guess I answered your question, so you don't have to ask me later. So if you are still here, maybe ask me a different question later. So, where were we? Yes. When it comes to this, especially this superior pharyngeal constrictor, it's really not addressed too much in the voice books. I don't know. Like I never was told that I had a superior pharyngeal constrictor in voice lessons or in all of my education in school. Or if I was, it was something like I was given a handout like this, and I had to, I had to learn some of these muscles and be able to identify them, maybe. But I didn't have a deep understanding or any kind of relevant discussions about this, especially these pharyngeal constrictors. So think about a muscle that's connecting your tongue, jaw, your skull, and this kind of spine in the back of your vocal tract. And now think about what's happening when you're moving your head around. And remember that you also you also have a connection from your chest to your vocal tract. And just to point out that this is cool, we have this white line, this linea alba, that's the separation between the abs, and that's connecting to the xiphoid process, and that's the bottom of the sternum joint. Then there's the manubrium at the top, and the manubrium connects by muscle, not by fascia, but by muscle, to the thyroid and the hyoid. And then this hyoid connects by muscle to the pharyngeal raphe that's in the back of the vocal tract, and then the pharyngeal raphe to the pharyngobasilar fascia, and then that connects to the hard palate, and so to the skull, etc., etc. But you have this interesting deal where there's this raphe in the front, and then it's connecting to a raphe in the back, and they're working together. So I just thought that was cool. It's cool to contemplate it. You visualize that and notice that they actually have related functions, and it's really cool. One great exercise to start to see the relationship between this superior pharyngeal constrictor, head rotation. Should we say like skull, head rotation? And when I'm saying rotation, I don't mean like lateral rotation, but whatever this plane is, whatever this axis is. So like raising your head and lowering it, and also I'll turn to the side, protracting your head and retracting your head. All of these can be thought of as vocal gestures. And the justification for thinking of that as a vocal gesture is that your superior pharyngeal constrictor is tying these motions to the movement of your skull, is tying these motions to the movement of the skull is the motion, is tying that motion to a whole bunch of parts of your vocal tract, and is providing the stability for those parts towards the center. So we could say proximal stability as opposed to like distal away from the center. Proximal is towards the center. So you can make some proximal tension using this pharyngeal constrictor, this superior pharyngeal constrictor. And then if you were to move the head, move the jaw, move the tongue, or move the hyoid, you would be affecting everything that's connected there. And you could be making complex shapes. So that it shouldn't be surprising when I tell you that one of the main vocal coordinations you'll be relying on if you're trying to go in the direction of fuller density metallic singing will be feeling like you're replacing opening your jaw with flipping your head back, like as if you're like a Pez dispenser, or maybe like you're Pac-Man or something. You'll feel like you're talking like this, and there's this awesome, I think he's singing Norma, but there's this awesome video of Mario Delmonico where it's like perfect profile, and you can really see this happening. And what's happening is he's reprogrammed his brain to replace some normally really small movements of the tongue with really big movements of the head that happen to make his tongue, larynx, jaw, whatever it is that he needs, wherever he needs it to be, in the right place. So yeah, Michael Caliplip. No, I mean I have to disagree. I hear them using it. I don't know which maybe you mean a smaller set of tenors than me, but I'm including all the tenors in the operatic world. And yeah, I hear plenty of people singing, especially small parts, with probably what you would call mixed voice. I don't call it mixed voice because I don't use those words. I don't use those terms. And if we're including all of opera and all of these different roles, if you mean like a spinto tenor, he's not using mixed voice. But he might actually, I don't know. like Don Jose in Carmen has this aria, and it's actually not like a really big loud aria, but it finishes usually with the way it's written. There's a chord on the last note for the tenor. It's not the last note, but it's like a high note, and the composer wrote pianissimo. And usually the orchestra finishes playing, so it's just silence, and then he can sing either mixed voice or falsetto on this high note, and it's fine. So if we're strictly answering the question, like, do they use it, then yeah, they do. But these things you're saying are true. But yeah, so I don't know. I don't know, Michael. Have you heard? What do you think of? I just want to know. What do you think of like Martin Müller? Like, do you think that he's not singing with squealo or chest voice? Because I don't know. I don't use the term chest voice. I think it's really imprecise. You know, I say things like it's metallic or it's not metallic. And then I can say it's more metallic or less metallic. And metal is like a real thing. You know, chest is not chest. You know, like there's no like 5 chests, you know, but you could actually measure, theoretically anyway, how metallic a sound is, a vocal sound. And then density, I talk about density, and like density is a real thing. It has to do with how much you're stretching your vocal folds in order to raise the pitch. So if you're stretching your vocal folds more to raise the pitch, then you might be winding up making this voix mixte. But voix mixte is in all of the... we're supposed to be reading Manuel Garcia today, and I'm procrastinating and doing anatomy. But Manuel Garcia is teaching voix mixte. And he's also teaching... he seems to be also teaching falsetto. And he calls that his middle register, but he's saying in his book that no, this is actually falsetto, that I just changed the terms later, but it's falsetto. So, and it's a little bit confusing, but yeah, I think Martin Müller is not sounding, I don't know, faking the sound. I don't know. It's the same sound, dude. It's like fuller density, metallic. He's using mostly the same vocal modes and making a lot of similar choices like Franco Corelli was doing. And he's not the only one. Like this John Tiedemann guy sounds really great. Is it John? Yeah, I think it's John Tiedemann though. He sounds really great. Maybe we need to do some listening here. There has been this tendency to encourage more lighter singing, which is sometimes a little bit, it's not working. And I mean, feel free to watch the last couple of live streams I did. We're looking at Klaus Florian Vogt, and we compared to Lauritz Melchior, and we also compared to to another tenor. So in my opinion, if you don't like this Klaus Florian Vogt thing, I think you should learn my terminology, because you then you can actually express what it is that's missing. And you could say it's not just subjective, it's objective. It has a name, you can measure it, and whether it's there or not there is just a matter of the truth. What is the truth? It's not a matter of opinion. So Klaus Florian Vogt, when we were listening to his Infernum Land, but as far as I know, he sings everything in this way. He sings his sound, he sings tenor, without any metal in the sound. Metal is a quality in the voice that's defined by the Complete Vocal Tech Institute. They made this thing called Complete Vocal Technique, which is it's not ready as far as opera. It's like they're not ready to help us yet with opera, but they're making some really incredible discoveries and doing some really important studies. And they found that actually your vocal folds can vibrate 4 ways. Everyone's vocal folds can vibrate 4 ways. And we aren't talking here about M1 and M2. We aren't talking about how thick the vocal folds are necessarily. We're talking about what does the shape of... I'm going to make myself a little bit bigger here. We're talking about what does the shape of the wave actually look like when you measure it. Is the front side of the wave as gradual as the back side of the wave, or is one side of this wave pushed over to one side? When you have this heavy skewing of the pattern of vibration, you can start to have distinct shapes, not only with the skewing of the vibration, but by changing how long the vocal folds are stuck together during the vibration, right? So what they found was 4 modes. And it is totally true. I totally will agree with someone who says that since the since like the 1970s or so, there's been a tendency for especially operatic tenors to sing with less metal. And then on top of that, also a tendency for singers across the board to sing with their vocal folds more stretched out. And so with less of what Complete Vocal Technique calls density. So regardless of vocal mode, they have reduced the density. Where does this come from? In my opinion, it's exactly what you would expect when all of the teachers in schools are, and also in the private studios who are just as guilty, are telling everyone that when you want to raise the pitch, you need to stretch your vocal folds. That gives you the mixed voice. That's literally how that happens. So we shouldn't be surprised that we get this result. And then also, for some reason, the people who are in charge of deciding what gets cast or whatever, who gets cast, have been favoring... there's been... excuse me. It's been fashionable for tenors especially to be lighter and lighter and to have less and less metal in the sound. Is it fake? No. I mean, it's just a different sound. Are they going for the same thing that people used to do? I don't think so. And Joey Pye, I think George Till uses a lot of Wamix. Yes, and a lot of neutral as well. And reduced density. It's a much lighter sound than like what I go for. Anyway, so Michael, but back to what I was saying. I think if we get together and we start saying objective things, then whatever it is that your opinion is, whatever it is your taste is, you can ask for it, and then we don't have to just say like, it's fake or it's not chest or whatever. We can say Klaus Florian Vogt. Nice guy, I'm sure. Sounds beautiful. But excuse me, for me, it's very important that these roles like Lohengrin be sung with metallic vocal modes, and preferably fuller density metallic vocal modes. That this is for me like a requirement. And then at least we can't, like, nobody can tell you that you're crazy. No, that's not what you're like. No, or that you're just I don't know, making things up or nostalgic or something. I mean, you can I make, anyway, I think, a good case for why Lohengrin should be, if not, if you don't have to sing it like Lauritz Melchior, but at least like Slezak, where if you're going to start that thing without any metal in the voice, Infernum Land, okay. But if you're finishing like this, it's not heroic. And you could make a case, all kinds of cases for why it's not heroic. Like I like to say that, listen, you should sound like you can give commands to an army, or to at least like some soldiers that are around you during a battle, and they should be able to hear you, right? So that means you need a metallic sound for, in my opinion, for any kind of like a hero figure who is a military leader. Because how else is he talking to the guys? So for me, it doesn't work like dramatically. But I guess more important is we shouldn't be afraid to say, like, this is what I prefer. And especially, we shouldn't be afraid to say it if there's a word for it. If it's, and then we don't have to say, like, this is objectively, like, that there's objectively good and bad singing. We just say that there's objectively metallic singing and objectively reduced density or fuller. I guess that's more subjective, but there's an objective basis for it. And then it's like my preference, and that's it. That's my preference. But at least, then you're not, no one can tell you didn't hear what you heard. Anyway. So Joey Pie, I think the bigger difference with Bel Canto and Verismo is not going to be metal, it's going to be density. I think that there's a couple big markers that you can look for, and also this isn't going to be limited to Verismo. There's some like Gluck some Gluck rolls that might follow these rules. But if you have a leap, for instance, to a high note, and you're coming from the middle of the voice for a tenor, it's not hard to I mean it's still a skill that you have to have, right? But it's not going to be as hard, shall we say, to keep that fuller density compared to if the tessitura is high. If the tessitura is really high on a piece, it's not that it's impossible to get up there with fuller density. It's that once you start articulating, like as we saw, like all this stuff is connected up so far when we look into it. Even like your jaw is connected to this thing, this raphe in the back of your pharynx by a muscle called the pharyngeal constrictor. So all that stuff's connected up. And when you go to articulate, to change from one vowel to another to make your consonants, etc., probably you're going to wind up yanking out the coordination. Like you'll like just pull the larynx right out of its position. And the problem isn't that you moved the thyroid cartilage or the larynx. It's that like the top of the arytenoid cartilages are connected to the epiglottis. And that's connected to the hyoid and the tongue. And so basically, you're disturbing what's inside when you do that, and you wind up losing the acoustic feedback loop that you've been using to create your metal. So you can the way I like to get people to think of it is stop thinking of your vocal folds. Think of this whole structure, including your epiglottis. Your epiglottis down all the way to your trachea and your tongue even. Include your tongue. And maybe even include the back of your neck or the back of your throat, your pharynx, whatever. And think about it as a gesture that's using that whole thing. Yeah, your vocal folds are in there in the way that like my fingers are in here in my fist. Or the tips of my fingers are in my fist, right? They have a role. But what I'm thinking of is the whole gesture of the whole fist, right? And you could think of it like, oh, maybe I have this gesture, I have this gesture, I have this gesture, and this gesture, and these are the part of my vocal coordination. So to me, like when people talk about closure or something like that, they're probably talking about not the vocal folds, but quite a few things in the area. And what the brain actually has mapped is something like a gesture with a fist, or and it's not hard to think of how to make a fist, but it's a really complex movement actually. So if I try to describe making a fist, I wind up with a very difficult thing to say. It's complicated to describe it. Anyway, so in bel canto, you tend to have a slightly higher tessitura. There's the possibility to go a little bit higher, I think. So you wind up with some composers doing a little bit more extreme high notes. I think I think that it's still calling for a metallic sound, but with reduced density, so more stretched out vocal folds. And then that can transition, of course, into a non-metallic sound anytime you're going into pianissimo. In my opinion, reduced density can be more flexible than fuller density. You can probably do a lot more with coloratura, etc., with reduced density. So, and it's also still rather loud. And when you start raising the pitch, you don't notice as much of a difference in power. The real difference in power shows up when you're if you're on an E flat 4 and singing with more reduced density, and then you compare that to E flat 4 with fuller density and metallic, it's you can do a lot more. And then as you get even lower into A flat 3, for instance, it's night and day. The being able to go into fuller density, you can do declamatory singing, and there's some kind of effect to it. It has weight to it. And then with this lighter style, you tend to use more raising the pitch. Type 2 nonlinear effects that Ingo Tietze describes. So for instance, the effect that you get from coupling the second resonance of the voice to the third harmonic, these kinds of effects scale up with the pitch. So they become more and more relevant the higher you sing. So that would be that's what I would say is the main difference, and that the composers are responding to it or even asking for it. That the bel canto is tending to ask you more to rely on tuning the timbre, and that this more verissimo spinto singing that's lower, or tenore di forza. Or if you look at like Gluck, some of Gluck's writing actually calls for this, where you have a lot of declamation that's around like A flat, low A flat, and low, not or middle for the tenor, below E flat 4. A lot of declamation below E flat 4, even below C 4. And then leaps up to the top. And then that's more, I would say that's a more veridic style, more verissimo. Yeah, so that's a good question. Joey Pye, aren't specific gestures almost a robotic and limiting way of thinking about vocal technique? I don't know. Would you ask that question about your face? Or like, aren't specific gestures a robotic and limiting way to think about your face? Well, it depends. Like, if you're doing something like those Instagram reels where you do the crazy face moves, then no. Crazy face moves on Instagram are going to be more expressive when, like, the more you limit them, the more you are extremely precise about getting exactly to that facial gesture or posture at exactly the right moment, you know. And the more it's the same each way, the more expressive it is, actually. So yeah, no, I don't think it's limiting. I think it's expanding awareness that of how it is that you're already processing movements in your vocal tract, like closure, for instance. So I think, and closure is a big one. Because, for instance, I see this Salvatore Fisichella guy, or something like Fisichella. No, Fisichella, I think is how you're supposed to say it. And he claims that he makes the vowels with his vocal folds or something like that. Or anyone else who's claiming to do something specifically with their vocal folds, and it's something like closure. And when I get them to describe it to me, the words that they're using and the sense, what I do is kind of like rely on mirror neurons, I guess, to, like, when you describe an experience to me, I try to recreate that experience for myself. And then I explore that, and that's how I form my ideas about what people experience. I guess we all do the same thing, or maybe we don't. I don't know. But my feeling, based on how heavy their experiences feel to me, so they don't sound like they correspond to very, very, very tiny muscles doing very, very, very tiny things. They sound like they correspond to medium-sized muscles in the vocal tract doing kind of medium things, or doing coordinated things. So something like closure, to me, the way that it's described, I'm much more going to suspect a combination of the tongue and the ariepiglottic sphincter, if you will. So using the tongue and the epiglottis and the TA and different structures there to make like a sphincter action, that would be, I think, a much better explanation for the feeling of closure. And just happens to be also that so far that, like, the science is saying, yes, you need this narrowing in the epiglottis, right? And I'm looking at the anatomy, and the top of these arytenoid cartilages that are connecting, that are holding the vocal folds. So the vocal folds come from the bottom of the arytenoid cartilages. They're like, think of them like pyramids sitting on top. If we need to, we can hub. I'm just gonna, so let me know, guys, if we need to look at the anatomy. I'm gonna assume that you know it for now, but everyone's on different anatomy knowledge levels. So anyway, we'll try to get this right. Make sure everybody understands. But where was I? Well, 1 second. I'm gonna let me take just one tiny break to get my head together. I'm gonna put this on. Okay, Joey Pie, that's a great comment, and thanks for making that comment. That's even better than a donation. So, I forgot where I was, but I'm just going to go with this comment of yours, and we're going to talk about that. Because actually, this could have been the whole topic of the live stream tonight, and probably I'll never get to Manuel Garcia. I'll have to change the title of this one. And because all we did was talk about anatomy today. So I'm going to propose something about imitation that maybe is a medium between, well, okay, there's two camps. There's the anti-imitation camp and there's the pro-imitation camp. We've been reading Garcia in this live stream, except not today. We're procrastinating, talking about pterygoid hamuli, but Garcia talks about that imitation is the what is it? The question is like, how does the singer learn? And he says chiefly by imitation. I think that's the answer. So I think I have a set of conditions for when imitation is good and when imitation is not so good. And welcome, let's see, Nikolai Primark. Primak. Primak. I think. I don't know. But I think Nikolai, yeah. Anyway, welcome, Nikolai. I think when you are trying to get one particular kind of gesture, and this ties into gestures as well, there are particular types of gestures that are best learned by imitation. And then there are other types of gestures that perhaps you could get stuck trying to learn them by imitation for the very reason that the first type is easiest to learn by imitation. So that sounds complicated. Let's go back and introduce two terms. And okay, so you know about these non-fungible tokens that are in the news these days because it turned out that they were a big scam and everyone's losing their money. So the point of a non-fungible token is a one-of-a-kind token. And the idea was that they would make these artwork, and even though it's just basically a JPEG that like anyone can copy, for some reason, everyone gets together and agrees that like your one copy is the one copy and it's not equal to the other copies. It's non-fungible. That's what that word meant. And then, so like, what's a fungible? Well, if I have a JPEG and you have a JPEG, it's the same file. And let's say we make 20 copies and give them to 20 people, and then we ask those 20 people to exchange their copy with somebody else's, like at the end of it, nobody has anything different, right? Those JPEGs are all fungible. You can exchange one for another and it doesn't make any difference. The other classic fungible thing is money. So if I give you $1 and I give him $1 and then you two exchange dollars and then I buy your dollars back from you, meanwhile you traded them for another $1 with somebody else or whatever, so that I don't have my original dollars. It's just like I have my original dollars. There's no difference. They're fungible, right? There are, let's say, effects or things you can do in your voice, gestures, with fungible consequences or results, whatever, and ones with non-fungible results or consequences. An example of completely fungible, or probably the example or the fungible thing, is vocal tract resonance. The tuning of your vocal tract, if you're following the system that I use, which you can, if you're not familiar with it, check my videos on Mr. Opera about visualizing vocal resonance. Just to reintroduce, we have 5 areas of interest. The total length of the vocal tract is the first area of interest. The end of the vocal tract is the second area of interest. The beginning of the vocal tract is the third area of interest. The fourth area of interest is 1/3 of the way from the beginning to the end. And then the fifth area of interest is 2/3 of the way from the beginning to the end. Let's say that you wanted the first resonance of your vocal tract, and I'm going to use just simplified math here, and maybe I'll make a little. Let's make a little projector here, and I'll okay. I guess this works. Bear with me, guys. Over here. Okay. So let's say I'm trying to do. I want the first formant. Let's make it the second formant. Let's make this more fun. Let's say that I want the second resonance of my vocal tract, right, to equal, and then this isn't a real number. This is just making something up here. Say we want it to equal 5.5. Okay? And let's say that from area of interest number 1, right? If we were to have a completely uniform tube, just a regular even shaped tube of the particular length that we have right now for the vocal tract, that would give us a value of, shall we say, let's say 3. Now let's say that at area of interest number 1, we are raising our second resonance, because we're raising all resonances, by, I don't know, plus 2. And let's say now that from, oops, and I meant to put which area of interest here. So delete this and try to erase this and try to, so AOI, oh geez, that looks terrible. Sorry guys. Take this one out too. Clean up my letter O. AOI 2. This one was AOI 1. Okay. And now let's say that number 3, because we have a lot of twang or something, right, is giving us a plus 3. Now we look at what's our second formant adding up to without getting into areas of interest number 4, which is going to be like behind the tongue, and number 5, which is going to be like under the hard palate probably at this point, right? Without getting into those yet, our tally so far is 3 plus 2, so 5 plus 3, so 8. We are currently at, from this, that gives us the number 8. It's too high. If we wanted F2 for some reason to be at 5.5, what are we going to do? Well, it's really as simple as continuing with this process, and we're going to have to make it so that we lower F2 by the correct amount to get to 5.5. So that's 2.5. So let's say we have, I don't know, 1.5. This is taking, let's say that this is taking our second formant down by 1.5. Down by 1.5. And then this is taking it down by 1. Right? So now these together add up to 2.5. Or, sorry, negative 2.5. And we add those together and we get to 5.5. That's literally that simple, but it only works because whether you used area of interest number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, or number 5, well, let's say number 1, let's leave number 1 out. But at least whether we used number 2, number 3, number 4, or number 5 to bring our second formant, our second resonance of the vocal tract where we wanted it to be, we could have gotten these numbers from anywhere. Like we could have, if we wanted, let's say, to, if we wanted to lengthen the vocal tract, right? The area of interest number 1. So we lengthen it, but oh, now it's only giving us plus 2. Maybe we can back off of how much we're lowering from number 4 or from number 5, right? Or maybe we can do something to raise how much we get from area of interest number 2 or number 3. So we can open the mouth or we can add some twang. So yeah, that's how that works. And when you're able to do this kind of math, it's because everything you're doing with your constrictions, vocal tract lengthening, whatever, from the point of view of tuning the formant, it doesn't matter where you do it from. It's fungible. And that I was wondering if you're trying to imitate and your goal is to tune the formant in the same way, then that would be really useful, right? But let's say your goal is to have a metallic sound. And you're listening to singers with a metallic sound. And what your brain is picking up is where they have the resonances of the vocal tract. And you're already able to move your vocal tract in a way that makes those resonances, that tunes those resonances of your vocal tract in the same way as what you're trying to imitate. Well, in that sense, you'll be getting the same result. From the point of view of your fungible gestures, you're getting the same result. But if you were looking for metal and you're focused on, let's say, the second resonance or whatever it is that you're focused on can be got some other way other than making this twang that you need from area of interest number 3, then it could lead you astray, I think. So that's why I think, imitation is awesome. But what I wound up with after years of Garcia and then really thinking about it hard is position, motion, and attitude. That's like the three categories of action from New School singing. And these 3 options include your imitation. So right there in attitude is your imitation. It's not like it's not there. I mean, it's really important. And I agree with Garcia that it's like it's the chief way of learning a new coordination is through imitation. But then when things are stuck, or when, especially I think if you're dealing with non-fungible effects, like what will happen when you narrow area of interest number 2, what will happen when you expand area of interest number 2? That's the end of your mouth. If you're not familiar with all the terminology, and stop me if you're not familiar. Go ahead, put a what are those called? Comments. Put a comment there, and I'll go over these for you. But if you don't know that you need a change of position in area of interest number 3, and you're just relying on imitation, then it can cause problems, I think, because you're succeeding in one sense. You're succeeding in imitating what it is that you wanted to imitate, but then there's maybe more to it. And so you could, of course, make a point that if your imitation is good enough, you are imitating the metal in the sound, and you will get the same position and motion. And it's true. So I just say, though, if that's not you, if you're right now imitating and not getting the results, then give position and motion a try. When those start to work, go right back to imitating. Go right back to what you were doing before, right? So it's not like I don't know. When I would go to lessons, or when I would like get a new vocal concept, it was always like They were never telling you that, like, oh yeah, you can do this in the morning and then this in the afternoon. And they seem like opposites, but don't worry, because it's as long as you don't do them at the same time, it's not a problem. Just do one in the morning and one in the afternoon. or whatever. Do one next week and one the other week. So when it comes to like whether you should imitate or whether you should, let's say, if you're going to do position and motion, instead of imitating, an example of what you would do is get in front of a mirror. And you would get in front of a mirror and look at what your mouth is doing. You could imitate what someone else is doing in the mirror as far as position and motion. So, and I guess in that sense, we're still imitating. So yeah, that's where I fall on there. Imitation is super powerful. Nonetheless, new school singing, which is symbolized by, no. Well, for some reason it's like going away. I've got it programmed wrong. But it's got its little symbol. Let me see. Let me bring it up here. New school singing. There we go. Looks like that. New school singing relies on an overall concept called switching. Switching is... Just give me a second and let me get my thoughts together about switching. I'll be right back. Yes. Oh, and I guess, while I'm mentioning, I think it was this third week of October, I'm possibly going to Berlin. Might possibly be available. But mostly it looks like my surgery is getting pushed back to late December, so really we're looking at winter for these if you're interested in working together in Berlin, that's where I'll be moving into this next phase of my my life, I guess. Wow. Yeah, exciting news for me anyway. But where was I? Let's do it, guys. Let's that. We need There we go. I think we should I said this would be number 15, and I don't want to go and change. I think it's easier to read you guys a little bit of hints on singing rather than go and change the titles on 2 channels. It's working, guys. Listen now. Are you ready? We're gonna read Garcia. Garcia time. New school singer Garcia time. Gonna read Manuel Garcia. Yeah, sorry for the song. I can't help myself. Okay. And where were we with this Manuel Garcia? Let's see. Skipped a bunch of we finished this first section. We were moving into section 2, which was I think the more fun section. And still we wind up procrastinating. The shake or trill, that was fun. We learned that Manuel Garcia called trills shakes. So he's gonna do the shake. Let's see. This guy. And we were into part 2 of this, which is singing coupled with words. Let's get some. I like a little bit of background music, I think, for this. Some of this. Just a little something, you know? Just trying to get that effect, like, you know, there's music playing in the background at the cafe. And we're reading Manuel Garcia together. Possibly there's cats. Could be a cat cafe. So maybe a little loud on the music, I think. Turn it down. This Caruso is in the background somewhere singing. And we're reading about the physiognomy of the voice. And I believe we were into this section on the mechanism of vowels. Here. Manuel Garcia. Hints on singing. Part 2. Section 33. Mechanism of the vowels. Can you give some indications regarding the mechanism of vowels? To produce both the Italian vowels a, e, o, alma, zeffiro, vortice, and the English a, arm, and o, glory, it is required first that the jaw should be drooping loosely. Second, that the vocal arch should be expanded. The tongue should be flat and limp for the a, hollowed at the back for the o, and somewhat raised in the middle for the e, tregua. The closed e, nero, needs that the distance between the tongue and palate should be lessened, and that the edges of the tongue should touch the upper teeth at the sides. When the Italian and English e, io, e, free, are to be uttered, the tongue still further reduces its distance from the palate, while its edges are pressed between the lower and upper molars. The closed o, volpe, correre, is the result of the expansion of the arch, coupled with a very moderate rounding of the mouth. The increase of this movement will produce the Italian oo and the English ooh. And there's a footnote here by our good friend Herman Klein. I shall have to make this bigger. It's a little bit small. The Italian vowels, being the purest and easiest that can be used for vocal purposes, they very properly serve as the fundamental basis for the study of tone production and for the first attempts at singing coupled with words. This does not mean, however, that our English vowels are formed or sounded upon a different principle. The contrary is the case. But there is this important distinction between the two languages, that whereas the Italian vowels are all single sounds, the English, with one exception, the E, consist of double sounds or diphthongs. Hence, the latter require more care in order to produce the correct proportion, balance, or combination of the respective sounds from which the vowel or diphthong, while preserving in full measure the identical volume of tone and beauty of timbre that would be obtained upon the single free Italian vowel. A good ear, refined utterance, and clever imitation will alone enable the student to obtain the desired result and so achieve perfect pronunciation of the English language in singing. Note, Herman Klein. Yes. So, what do you understand by the word accent? The importance given to a vowel in a word. Among the various inflections of the voice, distinguishable in different languages, there are two which most arrest our attention: the grammatical and the pathetic. I kind of wrecked myself with Herman Klein voice there. Anyway. Oh, Herman. Not kind to my larynx, this Herman Klein voice. What do you understand by the word accent? Yeah. Among the various inflections of the voice, distinguishable in different languages, there are two which most arrest our attention: the grammatical and the pathetic. The first is the prolongation of certain vowels in the word. Accente tonico of the Italian, for example. Nessun maggior dolore che ricordarsi del tempo felice nella miseria. Nessun maggior dolore che ricordarsi del tempo felice nella miseria. Dante. Let's try that better. Nessun maggior dolore che ricordarsi del tempo felice nella miseria. Dante. That's pretty good. Live for today, tomorrow's light. Tomorrow's cares shall bring to sight. Tomorrow's light. Okay. Live for today, tomorrow's light. Tomorrow's cares shall bring to light. That's kind of nice. Live for today, tomorrow's light. Tomorrow's cares shall bring to light. Yeah, that's how you should read that, I think. In a singing melody, we have to add to the prolongation, the elevation, the intensity of the sound, and the timbre. These three characteristics constitute the pathetic accent. What are the functions of the vowels? Intonation, sustaining of the voice, expression or quality of timbre, tonic accent, and vocalization are all entrusted to the care of the vowel. Okay, oh, that's kind of interesting. So he's treating the vowel like a concrete thing. And I wonder if he's the origin of this idea. If he originated this way of thinking of vowels as like almost like an alchemist would think of ingredients that they use for alchemy. I know ingredients is probably not the right word when it comes to alchemy, right? But whatever it is that if you're cooking, you use something, right? And in alchemy, there's something like that, like the ingredients. Okay, so thinking of vowels as ingredients, I'm not saying it's wrong. Yeah, I am. I am saying that it's wrong, but not here. Today, what we're interested in is like, what did Garcia think? And so he's treating vowels like they're ingredients. And each vowel, in his way of thinking, has one position, one shape. For him, unlike what we were talking about earlier, vowels are not achieved by using fungible gestures, but by non-fungible gestures. So when he talks about O, the jaw has to be drooping, right? How is a ventriloquist going to do it? No answer. What? How is a ventriloquist doing? Oh. How is a ventriloquist doing? Nessun maggior dolore che ricordarsi del tento felice nella miseria. Nessun dolore, nessun maggior dolore che ricordarsi del tento felice nella miseria. It's not the best ventriloquism. I'm really shitty in my ventriloquism about my what's called consonant substitutions. So for instance, in ventriloquism, you can go nella miseria. You can go nella. Nella. I don't have to go nella with my mouth open. I can go nella. But I can't say maggior in ventriloquism. Because in ventriloquism, you're not allowed to show any kind of movement of the mouth. It's supposed to be like you're not talking, right? And wait. No, I'll be right back. Which advertisement do you guys want? I'll use this one because it's longer. So I'll be right back. No, it's not that one. Ah, crap. I'll have to wait and do the other. There's not enough time. Yeah, let's go. Yeah, fall 2023. Also online, you can do coaching, tutoring stuff, but not beginners. Beginners are going to be in person. There's no point in this online crap if you're a beginner. But what I needed to play was this one. Yeah. Made it. So, the reason I had to go was, yeah. So, I mean, you're supposed to have like a microphone or something. Nessun, nessun maggior dolore che ricordarsi del tempo felice nella miseria, nella miseria, nella miseria, nella miseria, nella miseria. It doesn't, nella miseria. Yeah, anyway. Uh, yeah, okay. I should probably, yeah, so in ventriloquism, you need to do things like replace m with like ng or something like that, and I suck at it. But when it comes to e, e, a, I, o, u, a, e, I, o, u, e, a, o, I, o, e. Can make a lot of different vowels and articulate with those with the mouth really closed. And you wind up, when you do it, when you learn how to do it, breaking a lot of these rules that Garcia mentions. So he mentions like, whoa, yeah, guys, get rid of this here. Put that on. Okay. Get rid of this help guy. And we'll make this make this bigger here. So to get the the tongue has to be flat and limp. And it has to be hollowed at the back for the O. And the reason that it has to be hollowed at the back for the O, why did that happen? Why did it just go to there? I don't understand. This had this open. Everyone was happy with this, and now it this okay. Anyway, so the reason he believes you're gonna have to narrow, or you're gonna have to hollow the back of the tongue for O, is that you should have to expand some space to make the sound darker, in his opinion. Doesn't make sense that you would get the sound darker by having some kind of smaller space, because to Garcia, small spaces are always brighter and dark spaces are always narrow spaces are always brighter and big spaces are always darker, or expanded spaces are always darker, right? So where is he getting his information that you have to make this hollowed at the back for the O? Is mostly from, I guess, his exams, when he's looking down someone's throat with a mirror and he gets them to make the sound O. And then what they do is like the only way that's left. Maybe. So something something like that. You can, if you're trying to darken a sound, and if I want to make O, maybe I should just bring up, let's see here. Ah, that's wrong. Okay. Boom. Pink. Yeah, so there's pink trombone. I think if we go all the way in here, to interact with this. So over here. And I suppose I should label these again, as I need to do. See, I need to make some automated method of doing this. Why did this happen? Huh? Very strange. My computers. Sorry, guys, from my computer. to recap, just that we were talking about it before, but where these areas of interest are and how we make vowels. Mostly what we need to do is worry about the first two resonances of the vocal tract. The first two resonances of the vocal tract are enough basically to identify a vowel, to get someone the information they need to know what you're trying to say. Almost. Like more or less. Your first formant and your second formant. Okay? We're going to have two kinds of, well, I guess 3 kinds of areas of interest. So let's just get to it. Area of interest number 1 is basically the whole length of the vocal tract, from the beginning to the end. So we'll just put that it's the whole. Then what we're going to do is kind of color code these next areas. Area of interest number 2. Good. A bit more reasonable. Sorry, guys, as I try to. Yeah. So here in blue, we're going to have area of interest number 2 and area of interest number 4. Use a different color here, I guess. It's wrong. Okay. So area of interest number 1 is the whole length of the vocal tract. So I say draw a line from 3 to 2, that's number 1. And I've got it indicated up here in the upper right hand corner, just so that we don't forget about it. Now you'll notice AOI number 2 and AOI number 4 are in this other color, or in this kind of teal color. The reason for that is that AOI number 2, oh, let's see here. Let's see. AOI number 2 and number 4 are going to raise the pitch, raise the resonant frequencies that are associated with them when you expand them. And the ones in black, areas of interest number 3 and number 5, are going to do the opposite. They're going to lower resonant frequencies associated with them when they're expanded, and vice versa. When we constrict them, number 3 and number 5 are going to raise frequencies, and number 4 and number 2 are going to lower frequencies. And we can actually use this Pink Trombone website to give ourselves like an intuitive go at this, to see how this works. So let's aside here, and it should be making some sound. I think it's making sound, and you should be able to hear sound. With this app, here at the bottom, you can control pitch and also the clarity of the voice. And with this tongue control, it's really great because there's number 5, there's number 4, and you can flip back and forth between constricting the one and constricting the other. You can also see what happens, and I figured out a way to do this by left clicking and then right clicking. So if I constrict both of these, I can wind up offsetting what happened. Right? If we reset it like that, if you go into About, you can also play with this and see there's area of interest number 3 that I'm constricting. You can hear that this raises frequencies. And here's area of interest number 2. You can hear that constricting around area of interest number 2 lowers frequencies, and the closer you get to it, the more it lowers them. And that's how these works. You can get an intuitive sense of that by playing with pink trombone. And what I'd like to say about what Garcia is saying here, and where I think he's not able to see other possibilities, because it's kind of a weird thing to imagine that you could make an identical change in the resonant frequency from a different area of your vocal tract, and that you have some kind of fungible effect. If you're also doing something like looking in someone's mouth with a mirror, and that limits the ways that they can move, well then, every time you look, you're going to see probably the same gesture in order to get the same vowel. So Garcia wound up with this idea that if you want to go from off, and to do your tongue needs to be flat, because that's the way they were able to do it with the mirrors in the mouth like that. And then you're going to make more room, he thought, in area of interest number 5 to go from to O to lower. He doesn't figure by any stretch that for some weird reason, pulling your tongue towards area of interest number 4 is going to lower the second resonance of the vocal tract, kind of in exactly the same way that dropping the jaw or lowering the tongue or flattening the tongue is going to do it because of area of interest number 5. So there you have a fungible tuning effect, if you will. I thought that's pretty cool, and I guess that means we read at least one section of this Garcia, and the title of this thing is not a lie, and I can go enjoy a nice dinner and get on with my life. We can all get on with our lives. We read a little bit more Garcia together. So yeah, I mean, tune in next week. I guess next time I'll talk a little bit more about these fungible effects. Then shout out to Dove Enton. I don't know if you guys know, but one of our viewers is living in Israel, and his country's at war now, and we had been talking about some tracks he wanted to listen to before that all started, and now I didn't want to listen to them until he's all right, but he said he's all good to go, and he tunes in kind of after the fact. So yeah, glad to hear from you, Dove, that you're doing well, and I've got your stuff queued up here, as you can see. We've got the, what was this? Choral stuff. And yeah, so some interesting things we got coming up for Dove and Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan. Actually, I don't know if you guys know this performer, but this is some really amazing stuff from the world of, I guess, higher larynx classical singing. So it's classical. It's as classical as our Western music is classical. If anything's classical, this is classical too. And it's got this really cool structure. They start out by I'm gonna get rid of my thing. So they start out by playing these scales, and this is like they're setting the rules for the song basically here. The rhythms and everything. There's gonna be some vocalizing, and as we'll see next time, they do this crazy thing where they do vocal solos using their solfege. This section is like an exposition. This tells us like, oh, this is what song we're on. Anyway, but this, as you can hear, hopefully this is a higher larynx sound. They can darken the sound with tongue retraction and stuff. Lost the sound mysteriously. But anyway, we're gonna listen to this stuff together. Yeah, you guys can hear this, I think, and I can't. So anyway, but that's for next time. And just glad Dove is all right. And now I can hear it. What is going on? Anyway. Open broadcasting software. What can I say? It's open source, and it's free, and I can do things now. Talk to you guys like what I'm doing now. 10 years ago would have cost me $20,000 just to do this, these transitions and stuff. But now you can just download free software. It's pretty amazing. But I guess I've done too much of it tonight, and it's time to go eat something and sleep. And so you guys have a good night, and thanks for joining me here.
Al morbo crudele, so chi vuole, si servi fedele.